these two guys really rock, and we are going to have one heck of a program. So with no further ado, Andy, John, take it away.
You want me to go first?
You go first.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out today. It's always a lot of fun to do this. I don't get out here as much as I'd usually like to, but this is a lot of fun. For those that don't know, my name is Andy Hooser. I do a radio show on KQAM, 1480 on the AM dial. I do a weekday show, I do a local weekend show, and I do a national weekend show as well that's growing and doing well. So it's a lot of fun to do that. We got a lot of topics we'll talk about today. Usually him and I will just kind of talk about a few different issues and then open it up to Q&A and kind of banter and rant about all the issues going on in the day. But obviously yesterday, like you mentioned, State of the Union, I had some high blood pressure. My daughter actually had a sleepover. And I was yelling at the TV, and she's 9, so her friend was over. My wife said, Andy, you can't say that. Her parents are Democrats. I said, I don't care. That's throwing newspaper at the TV. That's my thing, so I don't actually break it. But yeah, that was interesting. We have the elections going on. We have our legislative session this year that's been really interesting for sure. That I think, well, let's just say some Republicans have been kind of our own obstacle on many of the issues going on in Topeka right now. So we'll touch on some of that stuff. But yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you guys so much for coming out.
For those of you who don't, wow, I haven't heard my own voice in a microphone in a while. I miss it. It's kind of weird. For those of you who don't know me, it's John Whitmer. I usually have a Sunday night show on KNSS. Lately, I've had guest hosts. As a matter of fact, this Sunday, it's Jeff Bluebaugh who's sitting in. This will be Jeff's second time filling in on the show, so thank you, Jeff. We're glad to have you back. I also, by the way, how many sat through the State of Dementia speech last night? Okay, it was not easy. You know, okay, so we could talk a little bit about Joe's little, you know, whatever that was. But I actually want to talk about Laura Kelly. And I made some notes. And I also want to talk, because for those of you who don't see it a lot, how many are on Twitter or X or until Elon changes the name again? Okay, if you're not on Twitter, I don't know why you're not on Twitter. It's not as bad. Ever since Elon Musk purchased it, it's actually gotten much better. Back in the day, it was a haven for liberals. It's gotten much better. I highly recommend that you download Twitter and you start a Twitter account. Because first and foremost, that's where a lot of the opposition is. And you need to be where they are to know what they're saying. Second off, that's where we are too. And it's actually a decent place to go and share ideas and stay informed. So I would recommend that you start a Twitter account. Because it's actually gotten much better. But one of the things that you'll notice, I don't know, how many of you remember when Laura Kelly came out recently? This was last month, and she called for more, and it's ironic because both Kevin and Jennifer told us to be civil, which I don't know why. We're always civil.
We're always good
We
together.
love each
Yeah.
other. I mean, we do actually love each other. He gave me my start in radio. So we love each other, so I don't know what they're talking about. But you guys remember last month when Laura Kelly called for more civility in politics? Which is the ultimate oxymoron, because there is nobody less civil and more partisan than Laura Kelly. But she called for more civility in politics. And remember, she ran on this middle of the road and being moderate. The humor in all of this is that Laura Kelly is the most partisan hack in the building. She is terrible. She's nasty, she's vitriolic. If you talk to Dan Hawkins or Ty Masterson, they'll both tell you she never meets with them. She doesn't want to have anything to do with them. Leo's a chair of a committee. Have you ever met with the governor on some pending legislation?
Never. You're not even
Right.
allowed to get close to her.
No. She's got a cadre of state troopers that won't even let you get close to her as she shuffles by. But she's middle of the road and she wants to reach across the aisle. That's just a whole load of hogwash. And I'll give you some examples, okay? So just in the last week, and here's some little headlines that I want to share with you. So, middle of the road. This is a headline. So what Laura Kelly does is she has her little minions on social media. While she's talking about being middle of the road, she'll send her trolls out to social media or Twitter to disparage and attack those who oppose her. So here's the headline. Again, her hands are clean, so here's your example. Kansas extremists can't ban abortion, so they've decided to harass women instead. That's the headline. Now, What was the bill? Well, the bill was requiring abortion providers to report the reason that each abortion is performed. In other words, transparency. That's not so bad. I thought we all liked transparency. But instead, we're harassing women.
What's a woman?
Well, that is true. What is a woman? That's a good point. What is a woman? Here's another one. Right-wing extremists in Kansas continue attack on voting rights. That's the headline. And what does the opinion writer take issue with? Well, voter ID. Voter ID. Oh, and of course, requiring advanced ballots to arrive by Election Day. But we're extremists. The last one, I really love this one. Legislative bullies target Kansas LGBTQ plus, and add letters here, for harassment with anti-trans bills. And again, what was the legislation? Well, it was saying that minors couldn't engage in gender-affirming care, i.e. chopping body parts off. But that makes them, what do you call them? Harassment and bullies. So you see, Laura Kelly can then portray herself as middle of the road, and everybody else in Topeka are the extremists. So just keep in mind that when you hear the press and when you hear those on the left and Leo and the others, colleagues in the building, talking about how they want to be middle of the road, it's not really middle of the road. So I just wanted to kind of just give you some context. But make sure that you're on these platforms, because we in the media, they in Topeka, need your voices out there pushing back as well. So. But I think we want to take calls, right? I mean, that's kind of, that's...
No, going off of everything that you ran through there, the legislative session has been frustrating, I'm sure, for many of the legislators. As we mentioned, though, would like to add that the Republican Party has been ones that we could get a lot of this done and ram a lot of it through. We know that the governor's going to veto these issues. What we need to remember is that it's been many of our own members who have switched and not voted for the veto of the governor's, or the override the governor's veto, because we know she's going to veto them. In fact, I always laugh at the fact that she called during her State of the State for a tax cut. We give her a tax cut bill. She says she doesn't want a tax cut bill done by Republicans, and she vetoes it. And then we have 2 or 3 Republicans from our side flip and actually not vote for the override on the veto. So we could get a lot of this stuff done and just laugh at her and make her one of the most ineffective governors in the state of Kansas in modern American history. But right now we seem to be kind of stalling ourselves, which is why the elections this year and some of the candidates coming up and some of these guys trying to get into Topeka, thank God for you, because we're going to need you more than ever, because we have to boost up our numbers right now. And with the middle of the road pact that she's focusing on, that she's announced, she's targeting the conservative districts in the area by putting in a quote-unquote moderate candidate that has an R in front of their name to make them think that they're going to be Republican, but to try to start swaying the bar the other direction. If she does that, then we know that we're going to have some R's up there, but they're not going to be R's that are going to be favorable to us in any way, shape, or form. So we have to be vigilant this election, and I know we say this every year because it's the hysterics of politics, but it truly is going to be one of the most important elections of our lifetime, which makes me concerned about the state of the state Republican Party and some of the leadership we have in the RNC and what's going on at our statewide level. But with the grassroots that we have, if we keep the grassroots moving, then I think we're going to be all right, because it's going to be up to us anyways. It's going to be up to the candidates to get their message out and to campaign hard. It's going to be up to the individuals, for us to make the phone calls, knock on the doors, make sure that we're aware of what's happening, and then, to donate money, to bring that money in, and then make the state party essentially irrelevant, because it doesn't matter. We just have to do it ourselves, because the party's not helping us, and the Democrats are going to try and put on their sheep's clothing and infiltrate us and do what they can, because that's all they have. That's all they have. Governor Kelly won, 7 counties in the election? Which is why I've been advocating for statewide electoral colleges for years, but that's a work in progress that I think we need to start having a conversation about. But until then, she can win with 7 counties, which means they can manipulate statewide races, and they can start shifting the momentum the other direction with the deep red districts that don't know what they're trying to do. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about and a lot of things at stake this year. And I'm excited, I'm optimistic, I think we can do it. We just have to be more aware and more conscious of what our elected officials are actually doing.
I know we want to talk election, because we do have an election coming up, and that's something I know we want to talk about. I'm glad, one thing you brought up, no, not yet. I don't want to talk election yet. Okay, wait.
I have to ask him. Hold on, I have to ask this guy, first question of the day, because it is election time, and you're running for office. So let's go ahead and talk about that, because you're not in behind the microphone right now either.
No, that's true. Okay, do we want to talk election, or can I talk tax real quick? All right, no. Well, first off, I do want to tell you tax real quick, because he brought it up. I'm a numbers guy. I'm a tax guy. If I am running for office, if I do get back to Topeka, for me the spending up there is just outrageous. I love Leo. I love Dan Hawkins. I love the leadership that we have in Topeka. But I'm sorry, spending up there is just out of control. And that is one thing that has to change. To give you some numbers, since my time in the legislature, total state general funding spending in Topeka has skyrocketed. It's now $9.5 billion, which is a 43% increase since I was in Topeka, which is barely 6 years ago. Can you think of anything that we need to spend 43% more in 5 years, 6 years? I mean, I can't justify that. I couldn't justify that. If you think about it, Leo, what's the cash reserves that they're sitting on right now? $3 billion? Right. She's sitting on, stuffed in Laura Kelly's mattress is billions of dollars in reserves, and yet her budget.
Steve Johnson was with us last week.
Yeah.
It's just a tad under 10 billion in the account right
Yeah. 10 billion in the reserves. Now, some of that is a rainy day fund, and some of that it's okay to have a reserve, but why are they sitting on all of that? And it's not her money, it's not Topeka's money, it's our money. And she's in her budget, she wants to spend 13% more than what they spent last year. This is outrageous, and there's no justification for it. And that's the reason, to parody what you said, that's why we have to send different people up there who are willing to actually say, no, enough is enough, we have to stop. That's the definition of insanity. Until you stop doing the same things over and over again, nothing of this is going to change, because this is not sustainable to have this kind of increase in spending, 43% increase in spending in less than 6 years. That's insanity. And we can't sustain it. I mean, we could if we were increasing our population by 43%, but we all know that's not happening. So that's the kind of stuff that when you hear these numbers out of Topeka and Laura Kelly talks about expanding Medicaid and how it's going to help all these people, no, it's not. That's another $2 billion. You've got to start reining in spending. So I'm sorry, this is one of my little pet peeves that pisses me off. Okay, what's your question? And why do you have to start with me? Why don't you start with them?
Well, real quick, just to bounce that up, I think we need stranger danger conversation in Topeka and just say, no, you're not allowed to anymore with spending. All right, the campaign, you're off the air right now. Benefits me, I'm joking.
Benefits Jeff.
But you're on the campaign trail, so, first off, talk about your race.
Jennifer, did you plug this? Okay, what do you want to know? Do you need the microphone? Can you hear us without it? You need the microphone. Okay, what do you want to know? Why am I running?
Yeah, why are you running?
Okay, this is an awkward question. Money? What? No, it's not for the money, trust me. All right, so what is the real question here? Is how did that happen? What
led you to run again?
So for those of you who don't know, the 93rd District is a seat that I currently live in. It's the one I used to serve in. And back last year in June, the current occupant of the seat, Brian Bergkamp, decided he was going to run for county commission. And there was a long conversation with Brian and the speaker and a number of other people about supporting Brian, and Brian was going to run for the county. And there was a number of us that decided, talk to him, and he was all in for the county. And at that point, they reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in running for the House again. And of course, I had to have that conversation with my wife, because as most candidates know, you don't make that decision alone. And I went to my wife, and she said, well, let's talk. And we talked, and we prayed, and we looked. I went to the station, and the station is very supportive. I have to be off the air when I'm running, but if I win, we'll broadcast live from Topeka on Sunday nights, so it'll be a blast. So that's the plan. And Brian was going to announce, and we were going to go. In late October, whatever, Brian finally announced that he would not seek re-election for the 93rd District, and he would run for county, and a week later I announced that I was going to run. I am running for county. I have 20, or for the House. I have 20 endorsements. I am assuming that Brian will stick to his word, and he will not run for the House.
We'll just kind of go around and people yell it out. So we'll repeat the question on the mic so everybody can hear it.
Okay, I was just curious about you recommending TikTok. You know, the Committee on Energy and Monetary Affairs yesterday voted unanimously 50-0 to have TikTok divest itself from China. And one of the reasons that I stay away from TikTok, and some people I know, is because it's well known that the Chinese Communist Party harvests personal data from TikTok. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, so great question. So the question for the didn't hear, it's about TikTok and whether we should ban it or not, and or at least try to separate it from the Chinese Communist Party. I will say that I am on TikTok, and personally I kind of enjoy it. You can kind of get your algorithm to get whatever you want to on there. I understand and I agree that they should probably separate from the CCP and actually go independent a little bit more than what they say they already are with ByteDance, which is owned by the Communist Chinese Party. But here's what I will say about TikTok, and I've said this on the radio show a few times, and I know it's probably doesn't fit in as much here, but my concern is they're collecting a lot of personal data, which is a concern. They are trying to get as much information on us as they possibly can, which obviously is a concern. I mean, Joe Biden won't even shoot down their balloons flying across our country. So we know that what they're trying to do for their sabotage. My concern is that, not necessarily a concern, but my point on this issue has been, if we're concerned about TikTok gathering our information, why aren't we concerned about all the other social media and internet sites collecting our data as well? We have Facebook that's essentially just channeling all of our metadata to our own government. We have our GPSs on our phones. We have the government that's essentially tracking every website that you go to, every phone call that you make, every text message that you have. YouTube and Google that are collecting data and giving it to the government. And our own government's the ones that call the MAGA people domestic terrorists and the most extreme political organization in the country. So I agree with wanting to censor a lot of TikTok. I'm also concerned of why aren't we just as irate about every other source that we use and allowing our own government to do it when they're making us public enemy number one, and they've militarized the CIA and FBI against our own people, and we're allowing them to collect it off of Facebook, Google, and YouTube. So I get it, but let's do it all or nothing is kind of the point that I've made on that one. And I agree. I think that TikTok needs to be addressed, and if we could separate it from the government more so, then fine. But our own government's calling us terrorists, and Joe Biden has had no problem arresting journalists, has no problem censoring anybody on social media, and coming out and taking all of our information for who knows God's what. So, I mean, metadata, while we haven't heard that term since the Patriot Act in the early 2000s, that's still ongoing, and they're still collecting all this metadata on us each and every day. Where's the irate outrage for that as well? So,
I don't have a TikTok account. I don't trust the app. Here's what I would say. I'm a big person for consistency. So if you're the federal government, if you're Joe Biden's administration and you're going to ban TikTok on all government apps, then your campaign probably shouldn't have a TikTok account where you're on TikTok using it to promote your campaign. So that's my issue. You're a hypocrite, either fish or cut bait. So I actually don't have a problem with them banning it, but that's just kind of my 2 cents worth.
oh, real quick. Last thing on that real quick too, is the young generation is on it. In fact, like 40, 50, 60% of anybody under 30, 25 is on TikTok. And as conservatives, if we're going to try and reach them, we got to be on the platforms that they're on. So either we have to figure out a way to get all of them off, or we have to find a way to be in front of them to start winning them over. So it's whether we like TikTok or not, or other social media sites, I hate it. I wish I lived 1,000 years ago when we actually got to stand on an actual soapbox and yell out to people and actually win people over. Wouldn't help my radio career, but at least we could do it that way. That I don't like this type of technology, but I'm trying to learn how to do it more to appeal to these younger generations that we have to win over moving forward. All right.
Yeah, I understand that there's a study that was done to show that our legislators are not paid enough compared to other states. Now, I believe that our legislators should be paid more because we get a better quality of legislator. Now, how can we do that without making it look politically like you're just rich and trying to enrich yourself?
So I worked, I don't think, Leo, have you had, remember the longest session in history? It was one of my last years there. We exceeded 98 days or something like that. Have you done a longer year than that, or was that the longest?
2017, we had.
Okay. Okay, so that was the longest still in history. That year, my W-2 was $11,000. Just so you know. Because you don't count the per diem, because I mean we're spending up to $1,000 a month in rent and all the other stuff. So my W-2 that year was about 12 grand. So and keep in mind, you can't have a real job when you're in Topeka, because what employer is going to let you be away from your real job 4 months out of the year? So as I remember, and I don't think it has changed, Kansas is still the lowest paid legislators in the country. They haven't had a pay raise, at least House reps haven't had a pay raise, and my recollection is, correct me if I'm wrong, it was 40 years since they. Now, all that being said, there are legislators, I'm not going to name names because I'm being nice, but there are legislators that voted no on property tax relief for veterans and voted for their own pay raise. So, that's not the way to go here. So I support the concept of giving them a pay raise. I think that they are underpaid. And I do think right now part of the problem you have are educators who are legislators, because one of the few careers that'll let you be up there and be and people who are retired, or people who are ranchers or farmers, people who are small business people who can afford to be in Topeka. If you want a different kind of legislature, you're going to have to pay at least commensurate enough to let them be up there 4 months out of the year, so that they can afford to have time away from home and from their business or from their job. I just think at the same time, then, I like the way they did it. They didn't, they set up a commission and the commission set their pay. It's an awful big pay raise, 300%. It's a give and take. It is, Leo, it's about average, right? It sets them on par with Missouri and Oklahoma and some of the surrounding states, right? It's pretty reasonable now, isn't it, the new rate? And you guys didn't set it. It was a commission, correct?
We had no figures in it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I think it's reasonable. I mean, what do you think? You haven't been up there.
Yeah, no, I have not been up there, but I agree. I think they did need a raise. I mean, because it does restrict the ability for a lot of potential great ideas and people up there that have great ideas to go up and fight. Do they need a $300,000 salary? No, absolutely not. But to make it comparable to the rest of the states, I mean, look, someone my generation that's a little bit younger, someone that's even younger than me, someone that wants to be up there and that wants to be able to have ideas to fix the state and do good things. You can't, first off, take off 4 months out of the year of a job and expect your job to still be there when you get back. So you're either retired and have money, or you have a business that you're running self-sufficiently and you can go and do it and take time away. Those are the only people that can go up, and not to poke on anybody that owns their own business, God bless you, you're doing it. But, are some of them that are going up that are self-sufficient that way with a business, are they doing it with their own personal agenda to try and help out their own industry and be a special interest for that industry? Which we've seen with Laura Kelly and some of the other Democrats. So I think that having a comparable rate to actually live off of, because we know that even though they're only up in session for 4 months, you guys go to different meetings, you talk with constituents, you go do stuff all year long. And if you're on other committees and working on other stuff, it's a full-time job year-round. You just may not see them in the public eye the whole time. That I definitely think that they need comparable. So I like the way that it was done. It's just the education of people that may throw the fit of, people giving themselves, government employees giving themselves a bigger raise. We understand the concept, and as conservatives, we're usually cringe at that a little bit, but I think this one's definitely justified, and I'm glad we're doing it. So, yeah.
Just to give you a perspective, the legislators who are up there, they go up on a Sunday night. Phil can tell you about this. They go up on a Sunday night, like you're staying, if you're lucky, you're staying at the Ramada or some. That's one of the cheaper places. The rooms at the Ramada are cinder block with carpet that hadn't been replaced. Shag carpet hadn't been replaced. Since, I mean, you could tell them, I mean, it hadn't been replaced since the 70s. You have a roommate, it's like college. It is nothing special. It's not like Washington, D.C., and no offense to our congressional delegation, but it is not anything lavish. Trust me. And you're there, it is lonely. It is, you went to the Men's Leadership Series, hence the jacket. Kelly Arnold and I co-chair the Men's Leadership Series. Gentlemen, if you're interested in getting involved in Kansas politics, I highly recommend trying the Men's Leadership Series. It helps to not only educate possible candidates, but people who want to get involved in Kansas politics. One of the classes that we teach is Campaign 101. And one of the first things that we do is advise anyone who wants to run for the legislature about the realities of being in the Kansas legislature. It's lonely. It's a burden on your family. The press is vicious, particularly to Republicans. They will expose any blemish in your past. You've had a DUI, you've had traffic tickets, you've had whatever. It is no fun. They will vilify you just because you have an R behind your name and ignore anything you've done bad because you have a D behind your name. And yeah, Brandon Whipple, thank you very much. I mean, it is a lonely, thankless job. Cheryl, you know, it is no fun. And so it is not worth the pay. So no one goes to Topeka for the money. So just rest assured, if anybody has any concerns about this little bump in pay, it ain't worth it. No one's going up there for the pay. In the back.
John, we go back 15, 16, 17 years.
I'm so sorry you've had to know me that long. I apologize.
It has been an honor, and I admire you, respect you.
Oh, wow. Okay, here's that $5 I owe you. I'll pay you after.
Okay, but you have been up there,
Yes.
and it's always been on my mind about the Supreme Court justices. But will that ever happen? And can you give us the honest truth on why? I might as well just forget that will ever happen. You've been up there. You know the ins and outs.
Talking about changing how Supreme Court justices are elected. Yeah. The method that we use to select justices. Well, it'll never happen with a Democrat governor, so let's start there. So as long as Laura Kelly's in there, it'll never change.
I want to hear the nitty-gritty.
The closest we came was, I was elected in 2015. I believe, Jennifer, you may remember, it was 2014, the year before I got elected. They got 2 votes shy, I believe, in the House. The reason, you need a supermajority, you need a constitutional majority to get there. And I believe it failed because of, well, I'll just call it what it is, rhinos. Because of Republicans in name only. Phil, wasn't that the number? I believe it was.
Well, the Court of Appeals is selected by statute.
Right. But the Supreme Court is done with the Missouri rule, which, right. Right. And so the only way to change, does everyone understand how Kansas Supreme Court justices are selected? It's done through the Bar Association. They pick the names, they give them to the governor has to select 3 of the names. And to give you perspective, how many lawyers are there in the Kansas KBA, members of the Kansas Bar Association? About 5,000?
Well, let's see. I've seen bar numbers as high as 30,000.
Okay.
So probably about 20,000.
20,000, but the voting members are down to about 3,000 to 5,000. At least when I was on judiciary, that's how many there were.
Well, you have to be a KBA member to participate in that.
How many vote usually?
Process for the people that are on the commission.
How many typically vote, bar members vote? Because when I served on judiciary, the numbers were about 3,000 to 5,000.
Surprised if there's more than 1,000 or 2.
Okay, so that gives you perspective. That few people are the ones who actually select the justices that they then put forward to the governor. And you're literally, it is the ultimate in nepotism because you've got this small cadre of lawyers who are picking the judges that then go to the governor for consideration. It's it's literally the wolves guarding the hen house. And the only way to change it is to get a supermajority in both chambers and to put it on a ballot. I mean, that wouldn't change it. That would just put it on a ballot and then the Kansas electorate would have to actually pass it. So to answer your question, you got to get rid of the governor. You got to put a Republican governor in there. Derek Schmidt would have probably allowed, but it's not up to him. So you got to get a legislature in there that'll do it. This current legislature, Mark Schreiber would vote no. Younger would vote no. So I don't know if you could get it through the House. I No, you couldn't get it through the Senate probably, so I don't even know if you could get it through this legislature.
Kansas Revenue has missed projections for 5 months in a row. And the number, the rate of their efficiency is increasing. Now, last February was 6% off. So, do you think there's a recession coming? And then the next one is, it looks like NRA's got its foot in the grave again, and they're probably not going to survive through the election cycle unless something's done. What would the election cycle look like now?
Great question. All right, so start off with the budget and the shortfalls that we're seeing in the state of Kansas. We could potentially be seeing an inflation for sure. My take is the Democrats have done everything they can to try and delay a recession as long as possible, knowing that they're probably going to lose the election in November, so they're trying to inflate it, inject more money, print more money, inject more money, just to keep things maintained until they get out of office, everything crashes, they can blame on the next administration, which is what usually happens. They've run out. They can't do that anymore. I mean, they ran out of the oil reserves when they tried to keep gas prices low, and everybody was freaking out, this time last year about when we were seeing the $4 gallons of gas. Everybody lost their mind. So they, of course, announced we're going to release 1 million barrels a day to try and supplement this, when we use like 20 million barrels a day on a regular basis. So it did absolutely nothing. So they drained it all just to try and superficially keep things where they were at. They've run out of those ideas, and they ran out short because now we're almost a year away from the election still. We're still a good few months away. So things are going to get pretty rocky, I think, for this summer as a nation when it comes to inflation, and they can't hide from it. They've done everything they can to try to artificially keep it down as long as possible until it implodes, and it's going to implode, in my opinion, sooner than what they would actually like because of that. Now for the state, the projections, how they continue to manipulate the projections and see exactly what we're going to see, and then we have the shortfall or the surplus. They have to keep tweaking that, because if you saw on the national level for the fourth quarter, they changed their projections so that way they could say, oh look, fourth quarter with the holiday shopping, everybody's spending lots of money, everybody's doing great, there's no inflation, these aren't the joy Joe looking for. You know, that's what they did the entire fourth quarter last year to show the economy was doing well at the national and at the statewide level, so they could say their policies are working, that Bidenomics is working, that everything's doing great and we're getting back on track, and we're spending more money. We're spending the same amount of money just for a less amount of stuff because of how expensive everything is. So their tactics to try to keep the wool over our eyes is beginning to crumble. So I think that we could be in for a rocky summer with people traveling, with gas prices coming back up, with the price of goods coming up. Food's still up 30% over the past 3 years under Biden. So they can't get away from that. They can say that it's down to 3%, and like Joe Biden said during the State of the Union yesterday, that everything was great, we're down 3% from 9%, he fixed the issue, and we created 15 million jobs, which is what he said for however long. That narrative doesn't work any longer, so I do think that we're in for a rocky time coming up this year, and they're going to have to explain it, which is why I think that's going to be probably one of the most important issues on the campaign trail. He's doing his campaign now where he's not saying Bidenomics, but he's saying the Investing in America tour to say all the great stuff he's sunk money into that's not doing anything. And people don't care because right now the food's up, gas is going back up, and the price of goods are going to go back up. So we have that to deal with. In regards to the NRA, they have their issues, and they're going to have to clean up their issues, and I don't know if they're going to be able to, because they keep getting hit after hit after hit, which is why I say that, I mean, as we know, politics is local, and you're going to have to start working with the local organizations, the statewide organizations. There are other big, great national ones, the Second Amendment Foundation, Gun Owners of America, other groups that do good stuff. But the NRA, I mean, let's be honest, they dominated the industry for the special interest side of things, and we need something like the NRA, and we need them if they would get their act together and actually do what they need to. But right now, I mean, we're seeing Kansas rock Second Amendment issues. We're seeing Arizona try. Apparently, Arizona, they're 2 seats away from flipping their House seats to Democrat majority, and they could start erasing a lot of their 2A issues, which is a cause for concern because they're a state in the top 3, I think, for gun rights in the country. So that's an issue to be aware of, but it's supporting local organizations, the Kansas State Rifle Association, which I'm on the board with, and other groups that can help in a different way as opposed to just the NRA, because we have to, number one, we need them, so we need them to keep going, but we also have to give them that major slap on the wrist for them to get their act together and actually do what they were intended to do as the largest special interest group in the country.
The only thing I would add is Kansas ranks in the top 10 for highest taxed states in the nation, and our spending has increased 50% in the last decade. So the answer to your solution, the answer to all of this is to cut spending. Yes, I've seen the tax revenue numbers. Well, we're spending too much. You want to solve the problem? Stop spending so much. In your family budget, that's what you would do. In the state budget, that's what they're going to have to do. This is not rocket science.
Yeah, I'm kind of concerned. You tell me we got $3 to $10 billion in surplus. You say the budget's increased 43%. So either they really jumped up the taxes to cover that and still have a surplus, or where's the money coming from that we're getting this surplus?
Well, they had they had some COVID funds, but they passed the largest tax increase in history back when I left and Leo came in. Leo did not vote for that, just for the record. I did not vote for that. But they reversed the Brownback tax experiment. It's the largest tax increase in state history. There you go. It's an income tax increase. That was Laura Kelly. She voted for that. It is what it is. I love Sam Brownback as a person. He's a great guy. Their concept with the Brownback tax experiment was sound. The problem was you can't cut taxes if you don't cut spending. You're seeing there's a pattern here. And that was their mistake, is they tried to cut taxes, and you can't cut taxes and increase revenue and increase your spending.
Is the surplus going to be compounded, or is it going to shrink because it's going to be the budget?
They're going to keep spending. Part of their problem, this is going to be a terrible thing to say, especially as a candidate, but part of their problem is they've got this perpetual commitment that they have to keep throwing more and more money at K through 12 because of the lawsuit. And I'm sorry, but they're required by the legal settlement, by the Gannon lawsuit, they are required to continue to spend more and more by law on schools, regardless of enrollment. My suggestion would be tie new funding to enrollment. If your school doesn't increase in enrollment, why do we have to give you more money? Or at least cut it to the rate of inflation. But that's logical. Gee, what a novel concept.
To build on that education thing, though, we are going into an open enrollment year for the first time starting in the fall, so that's going to change a lot of stuff. And if we do it based on enrollment, that's why a lot of these schools, especially the big schools like Wichita, they're panicking right now because they're seeing a lot of a major increase in homeschooling. Kansas right now is the #1 state for microschooling. If you don't know what that is, that's really cool. I like that idea. But they're moving districts. I live outside of Wichita in a tiny little school district, and we're afraid about the building even just shutting down. My daughter's 4th grade class has 9 students in the entire 4th grade. So it's small, and they're worried about shutting the doors because whenever they say they're investing in, just like they do everything else, they're investing in, the small people are trying to keep the rural hospitals alive or whatever, all the money, the vast majority of the money goes to the larger districts, and that's what's going to happen with the schools as well. So open enrollment is going to be interesting, and that's why the teachers' unions and the admins at these school districts are going to lose their minds over this because they could be seeing a lot of parents move their kids out of the area, which means it's going to be a loss of money for them. So they're not too happy with some of the changes that are coming, which I like that idea. I think that's good news for us.
I just want to thank both of you for bringing this vast information to this group of like-minded people because we're all very busy, and I like Andy's comment about he's a numbers person. And that's very important because we're all very busy and time is money. And when we talk about the social media that we have available to us, do we spend time on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, what is it? If we were to sacrifice just a little bit of that time and take the time, as much as I don't like Google, go to YouTube and watch live legislation. It's available to us every day. I didn't know that until about a month ago.
Yeah, we're starting to be a little more transparent with that. Yeah, there's a lot of information.
What bills are being, not just adopted and voted yes, voted no, but also amended. So I encourage you to watch.
Yeah, there's a lot of information, and even us in the media, where it's our job to focus on this as much as possible, there's so much more that we don't even get to or that we can pay attention to. You know, I still have people come to me while I'm doing show prep for the radio program and saying, hey, did you hear about this bill? Do you know what's going on here? And it's constant, and there's a lot of information, but it's becoming more transparent to us. Here, it's good and bad, and this goes into the TikTok conversation, the social media conversation, is that the information's out there, but now they bombard you with the information wave to where you can't absorb all of it. And they want you to do that so that way you stay overwhelmed, you begin to tune it out completely, and then you're not engaged at all. And that's the entire goal of this now, is it's trying to overwhelm you with information and then throw in the misinformation and the quote unquote hashtag fake news that's in there as well, that it's difficult to now to decipher what's real, what's not real, what's happening, what's really not happening, and it's very difficult. So, I mean, yeah, to be engaged, to spend a little bit of that time to do the research is what we have to do. You know, listening to media pundits and talk show hosts and stuff, we do our best to try and filter that out, to try and not tell people how to think, but to at least filter out some of the garbage to where you can come up with your own opinions is necessary, but it's still not enough. You have to do it on your own.
And then write your legislation.
And write your legislation, yes.
Okay, I'm a little out of practice. I will do something I hate doing, but I'm a politician. Oh, God, I hate admitting that. I hate admitting that. But I will, it is a dirty word. I will do something that I should do because I'm a politician. You're welcome. Blake Carpenter and I, as freshmen, passed the Kansas Transparency Act. And that's why you have live streaming of House and Senate chambers, is because Blake and I passed that bill. So, there we go. Hey. Pardon me? That was a bill that Blake and I got passed. Smart Alec. Yes, it took the whole body. Hey, if Laura Kelly can take credit for stuff, or Joe Biden can take credit for stuff, Blake and I can take credit for something. All the way in the back. Yes. No, you raised your hand. Yes.
Thank you for sharing about transparency. I think misinformation and lack of knowledge in the school situation can be used further to save the rural schools, because as the rural schools go down, the rural towns will go down, and then the farms will go down. So the speech last night was somewhat difficult about all the health.
Oh, yeah. If you listen to that entire State of the Union last night, it was nothing but government's going to save the answer, government's going to be the answer, spend more money, do another project. And you can see how many commissions in Washington, D.C. have actually solved any issues. I think that rural education is going to be one of the most challenging issues that we have to address, because you're right. For example, the free voucher program for the free lunches for kids. When they passed that and increased it a few years ago, was it Johnson County, Shawnee County, one of the big, Olathe School District, I believe. They changed their curricula, or their definition of what low income was, even though that's a very high-end school district. They changed what low income technically was so they could accept more of the free lunch program into their district, taking a vast amount of that money away from the actual rural districts. Again, my daughter has a school of 9 kids. I don't want that to shut down. I love rural schools like that because you get that one-on-one experience. They get that hands-on with the teacher. They get that rural style living. They get their close friends. It's a tight-knit small community. If those go away, like we saw with the Central School District just about a year or so ago when they were voting to whether keep it open or not, that's the challenge we're going to have to face. And I think open enrollment, with what we're going to see in the fall, is the first step towards that. What we have to do now is to show the appeal of what that rural style living is for education, especially to, hey, guess what? We're not confused of what bathroom to use for the children. That's, if we can start promoting that, and that we're actually getting back to the basics with education, that's going to appeal to a lot of people. Then it's just figuring out how to get them out of the city and into those districts to actually sign up their kids and register and move out there and enjoy that lifestyle. So that is going to be a big feat. It's going to be challenging. Microschooling is the other option. Homeschooling's those other options, which Kansas apparently is rocking at for these. So I think that is going to be challenge number one right now. Absolutely. I mean, we saw the Newton School District just close that agricultural school. I forget what it was called, but kind of that trade deal for elementary kids to learn how to do ag. That's important. Why the hell would we close something like that? That's ridiculous.
How privy are you to that mental health with the ARPA money, and if we don't spend it by such date, do you think that will happen? I mean, that falls to the counties, Pete Meisner and that group of folks.
I mean, they'll spend it. They'll find a way to spend it. I hate that, again, this is the way government works, is either spend it or lose it, so therefore we have no accountability to make sure it runs efficiently. They'll find a way to spend it. I'm glad we're focusing on mental health, but we should make sure the programs are actually running properly before we invest a whole bunch of money on something like that.
Can't be on the radio as a candidate, but you can be replaced by candidates in football.
Well, and a number of other candidates, because I'm an employee of the station. And so the FCC, the issue is, and again, it's lawyers. So KNSS is owned by Odyssey, and it's a mega corporation. And their lawyers got into it, and essentially what a candidate can do is then, if I have an opponent, which again we're hoping that Brian will, he's a person of integrity, and we'll hope that he sticks to his word. But we're hoping that that their fear is that someone would then come back and say, I want equal time. And candidates can say, well, if I've been on your show for 5 minutes, then I demand equal time. And the station just didn't want to deal with that. So if I don't have an opponent, I will get right back on the air. But that's the concern. So trust me, I would like to be back on. I think we have probably time for maybe one more or
Keep going.
a couple more.
No? Okay.
There is one thing I want to, I do, well, Cheryl, go ahead, you had a question up, so before I. Sure.
Last night, a friend and I were watching it together, and I just want to say something, a statement real quick, and I'll make it real quick. We were reminiscing about being at a school together with one of the superintendents, and we were sent places on private jets to go to training to Dallas and to New York, and there were big cases of books brought every year when we walked in, and all of our old books in the entire school were thrown out and brand new books were brought in. But that was the way the money was spent. This last year, one of the teachers, her husband is a senator. The immigrant children, there were 4 rows of children that couldn't speak English. They were aged kindergarten through 4th grade in her 1st grade class. And all of the English-speaking children were in the last 3 rows, so there were 7 rows. The front rows were 4 non-speaking. She didn't have help, and she could not speak English. Those 7 rows went on all year with her getting books started about how to speak all of their many languages. And that is going on every school. So them cutting the 6 or 7 schools is a setup. Thank you.
Yeah, imagine you get a fourth of the education in 4 times the amount of time, so you're not getting a whole lot of education. I'm telling you, education is going to be one of those, I think, most important issues that we can focus on, and that ties into the immigration issue and what we're doing to our schools, what we're doing to the communities, the crime rates that are going on. We're finding ways, subliminal and subconscious ways, to dumb the next generations down for easier control and not understanding some of the stuff that we're talking about. So it's a huge issue, for sure.
Let me jump in here because we're running low on time. I don't know, I hope they'll both be here. You can individually ask some questions. But Andy, you've got to talk to us about if you want to call into your show, when can you call into your show and when can't you call into your show?
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, I do 3 radio shows, so it's kind of difficult. My weekday program's from 4 to 5 on 1480 KQAM. It's on about 6 radio stations, and you're not able to call into that one because Wichita's the only market that it's live in, so I would only get Wichita callers, which I love you, but it would sound kind of strange for all the other stations that air it. So you can listen to that one. My Saturday morning show, again on 1480, is a call-in program from 9 to 11 a.m. You can call and talk. I love getting all the phone calls on that one. My Saturday evening show is a national broadcast. Again, not able to call in on that one. But by the way, thank you guys immensely. It's growing like a weed. I just got Oklahoma City to jump on board, picking up the show. Anchorage, Alaska is going to pick it up here in the next month. We got Bismarck, North Dakota coming on. So we are growing like a weed for this national radio show. It's amazing. Thank you guys. It's fantastic. So yeah. I appreciate that. But we do have a lot of stuff going on with KQAM with my local show. And then just to give a little plug for KQAM, we are doing an election rally partnering with Americans for Prosperity Thursday, April 11th. Todd Starnes, national syndicated host, he's coming in for his book signing. So he'll be here Thursday, April 11th. You guys can get with me, or you can find the KQAM Facebook page and get signed up for that one. But that's going to be a big event that we're going to do a panel discussion. I believe Eric Erickson may be coming in with AFP for that as well, and we're going to do a roundtable discussion. So really cool. But yeah, I'm all over the air on KQAM. You can hear me my weekdays, Saturday morning and Saturday evening show.
I'm just proud of him. I think that is so cool. I think we should be so happy that we have that, and I'm very proud of you, brother. That's very cool.
Let's give a big round of applause to Andy and John. Andy Hooser, KQAM and other stations. John Whitmer, he'll be back at KNSS at some point in time when he isn't doing the Topeka Shuffle. 2 of the next 3 programs, we're going to be focusing on education, so come on back. Have a great weekend. We'll see you.